Well, as I mentioned earlier, Qantas has opened international flight bookings and they're going to take off from July 1. That's great news for travellers and global economies. But what about our own economy? Interstate borders are still not open. There's struggling businesses, there are thousands stranded away from home, and the uncertainty is doing enormous damage to our economy. Now, for more on this, I'm joined by the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry boss, John Hart. John, you understand the tourism and the hospitality industry better than anyone else. How bad are these lockdowns hurting us?
It's just incredible, Corey. And, the closure of the state borders is doing so much damage. It's cost us probably 280,000 employees so far. And we built back confidence as things started to open up, and now it's taken another tumble. By the time we get to the 1 year mark of COVID, it's likely that we'll be $90 billion down in tourism earnings. And that's just devastating for our visitor economy.
Well, it is devastating. We heard a few weeks ago on this show that domestic tourism was expected to put in $60 or $70 billion because that's what's normally being spent overseas. And yet if we're limiting that, aren't we cruelling our economy, our potential for recovery here, not to mention the tens of thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs that could still be lost that are actually in the system already? Exactly,
Corey. And last year, or 2019, I should say, we spent $65 billion Australians outbound travelling for that year. Now, we tried desperately to recover that money, to make sure that money was spent onshore, but you can only spend so much in interstate travel, intrastate travel. Interstate travel is where the real money is. That won't make back that money, but it'll go a long way to helping out the visitor economy. But it's never going to happen if we've got borders closed.
Yeah, John, this is the extraordinary thing. For those who aren't in commercial business, the only thing that businesses need is some sort of certainty going forward. They need an assuredness that their business plan is going to be able to evolve over time, but they're going to be able to pursue it. And what we've seen in this last year is businesses preparing for ramp-ups, preparing for what the government tells them, and then all of a sudden the rug is pulled from under their feet. I know people now that don't want to take the risk of travelling interstate because they could be locked there and stuck there, or then stuck in quarantine for another fortnight. That sort of uncertainty is destroying businesses and is damaging the very confidence that we need to have an economic recovery, isn't it?
Absolutely, Corey. And if you think about consumer confidence sort of in the lead up to when we had those period of zero cases and the borders started to open, we were sitting at about 55% of Australians saying that they were looking forward to taking a trip. Well, that's absolutely plummeted now because we've got so many people that are saying, I just can't risk it. Even though all of the airlines and the other operators have been really flexible about bookings and refunds and so on, they're still scared to make that booking because they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We've got to have some certainty, not only for the businesses, but for the travelling public. We've got to know what it takes to keep the border open and at what point it will close. And that sort of certainty is what we have to live with this virus. This sort of not knowing whether tomorrow we're going to have the border slammed shut because we've got a cluster of 5 or 6 cases, that's just devastating to our business. And we're dealing now with the absolute peak in our operations, and we've now lost that peak because of these clusters that we've had in Sydney. So the industry is going to be absolutely desperate by the time we reach sort of February, March.
Yeah, the overreaction is actually killing us. But I'm so glad you mentioned the airlines. I mean, I've always had a crack at them for some of their difficult policies about changing flights or cancelling and getting refunds, but they have been extraordinary. Both the major airlines, Qantas and Virgin and Rex and others, have been fantastic in dealing with rapid changes and building up credits and accommodating people. Now, we want them to succeed. We need them to succeed. But is this a big risk for, say, Qantas to start opening up bookings for international flights relatively early, July 1?
Well, Corey, what's happened here is that we had Qantas really starting to ramp up domestically, and and focusing on getting the domestic flights back, and they were doing an outstanding job making that happen. But now they can't rely on that continuing because we've had these borders closed. So what they've needed to do is shift to looking at what they can do internationally, and good on them for moving the date forward. Looking to July, they're being incredibly flexible with any of those bookings and making sure that they can be refunded or credited. They're really doing an incredible job of adapting to what is, as we all know, a very fluid environment. And what we need for the travelling public now is to give them some hope. And this move by Qantas to move into the sort of July timeframe is an outstanding move for confidence, and done in the right way as they've done all the way along here. Their whole sort of Fly Safe program has been outstanding in a domestic sense, and they're really going out of their way to make international travel something on the near horizon.
Well, John Hart, that's all I've got time for tonight, but thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Corey. My pleasure.